Hi, I'm Jared Hillam. In the early life cycle of a breakthrough, there seems to be boundless possibilities. Those boundless opportunities are dominated by early adopters and open thinkers. But like with any useful invention, there's a primary use case that really drives the adoption. But as that primary use case becomes a standard, the focus becomes less about pushing the boundaries and more about making the primary use case work at scale. And we've seen this over the course of decades in essentially every industry and discipline. And the data cloud is no different. The primary use case for the data cloud is to take data and compute it into actionable information. Now, whether that information is used by an AI or a human, that primary use case is essentially the same. So within the primary use case of cloud data systems, we're starting to see some architectural stability. Yes, there are still some shuffling around, but we're really at the point where laggards are adopting. So what this means is organizations need to start stabilizing and cost managing their primary use cases. Just like car manufacturers, for example, have to transition from their prototypes to their production lines, companies need to do the same with their data clouds. Enter the center of excellence. Now, the concept of a center of excellence is as old as scalability itself. How do we take humans and define a process for them that maximizes the technology, which ultimately becomes the culture? Now, some might hear the word center of excellence and think, well, it sounds boomer-esque. I mean, didn't we leave the old organized world behind because we had unlimited compute resources in the cloud? And to some extent, I sympathize with that. But at the same time, customers that haven't grabbed the bull by the horns, they're getting mired in compute costs. And it frankly wouldn't matter what cloud compute layer they adopted, the cost structure would still be enormous. So yeah, if you've really built out an empire on these systems, it's time to maximize their value. So let's talk about some of the modern pillars of today's center of excellence. And I'm going to point out where this lands amongst some of the other pillars. Number one, access control automation. This is possibly one of the most important things you can do to enforce the outcomes you want. After all, these cloud data systems are unlimited. So if you can dynamically hook the data access to the systems that flag for hiring, firing, promoting, and demoting, you'll be able to control a huge amount of behavioral problems and wasted compute. Number two, data graduation. By having different graduations of data from raw to highly aggregated, you can couple this with access control to ensure the compute resources aren't wasted for the wrong audiences and queries. Number three, compute optimization. Now, many of these cloud data stores claim to magically optimize compute, and to some extent that's true, but we've seen performance increases of over 1,000% by dramatically reworking the query strategy. So organizations need to literally have an internal practice of sniping the most persistently egregious queries and reworking them in their greatest potential. And the annualized returns on doing this are more than enough to justify the team. Number four, AI auditing. This refers to auditing in both directions. ChatGPT, for example, supports Snowflake and Databricks code outputs. So both the humans need to audit the AI's code, and the AI should be auditing the human code. This brings opportunities to expand into other optimization strategies and avoid costly mistakes. I want to emphasize that the human really does need to know what they're doing here. GPT sounds really smart to a lay reader. Number five, organizational structure. Who owns the data in an organization can be a really touchy subject. Is this an IT thing or does the data belong to the business? The answer to that question can really impact how the solution is received by its users and what kind of organizational hierarchy you put together. Number six, training and education. Now, before you skip this part, just realize that in a large-scale data environment, you're going to have a many-to-many relationship between data objects and users. If we spend all of our time managing data objects and we don't spend any time training the users, organizations will find themselves chasing compute overruns simply because people don't know what they're doing. In the past, this was managed simply by the four walls of the MPP database's physical process limits. But in an unlimited compute world, this can easily happen. Of course, you can create programmatic guardrails, but nonetheless, we don't want team members gobbling up compute just because they don't know any better. So these are just 6 of the many modern Center of Excellence pillars, and I've written a short white paper on just these 6. And if you want to dive deeper in some of the others and some of the ways it might tie to your organization, I recommend you reach out to Intricity to talk with a specialist.